What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with Player Profiler. I am joined by my colleague Chuck Bass. And today we have a little bit of a special episode to Risers and Fallers. We are now currently post NFL draft. And so we're going to do a rookie edition today. Starting off with our first player here, it's going to be Kaleb Johnson out of Iowa. Kaleb Johnson, 21.5 years old, third round draft pick. He went pick 83 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Running back 6 off the board, and Player Profiler has him ranked as the RB6 and 7th overall. Chuck, do you like this landing spot, and is he a riser or a faller for you?
This is I'm not wearing any pants level of rising for me. It's really not all that often that you can pencil in a third round pick for 250 touches, but going to the Steelers, going to Arthur Smith, they still don't have a quarterback. I mean, it's very rare that you can just see the vision this clearly. I love this. I love the fit. Jaylen Warren is a nice complementary piece, but that's really what he is, a complementary piece. So Kaleb Johnson, moonshots.
Yeah, I like the landing spot for them. I think I don't think it does a ton to Jaylen Warren unless you were like super high on Jaylen Warren
Yeah.
to, like be a big feature in this backfield. But I think it's a perfect fit for Arthur Smith. And when you look, Najee Harris left, he touched the ball 263 times last year, 1,000 yards, right? So those are vacated carries that are now available. And Jaylen Warren had 120 last year in 15 total games. I don't expect that to go much higher, maybe 150, and if they're trying to ease the guy in. But with Kaleb Johnson, the biggest thing for him is, can he produce as a receiving back? Because that was one of his biggest issues in college, is he just was a guy that didn't really catch the football a ton, but was that really a product of the Iowa offense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, their leading receiver last year had just 355 yards. I think this is just a style fit, right? So, yeah, it's just going to be one of those things where we know exactly. We get Najee Harris. We literally just did this. We get Najee Harris with a home run speed. So sign me up.
Yeah, I'm definitely I definitely like the landing spot for Kaleb Johnson, so he's definitely going to be one of our risers. Next player on the list is going to be RJ Harvey. Gets drafted to the Denver Broncos, a little higher than people expected. This is a 24-year-old running back. He gets picked in the second round, so he gets day 2 capital and second round capital. Pick 60 to Denver. He was RB5 off the board, and Player Profiler rookie rank had him as RB7th and 12th overall. I really like this landing spot. Chuck, why don't you give me your thoughts on it first, though?
That's very kind of you, because I'm not even sure if you're wearing pants seeing RJ Harvey go to your Broncos. This is big time stuff right here. I appreciate you letting me bat off first. Sean Payton drafts a running back. We pay attention. They did everything they could last year to try and jumpstart production. They didn't really get it. They got, piecemeals, whether it was like a little bit of receptions here, a little bit of rushing here. Nobody really took the reins of the job. I'm not positive how early the touch distribution will be clear to us, because they still do have a few guys that can do a few different things, but he's the only one on the roster that's a threat in the rushing and passing game. So second round draft capital is about as good as it gets. Going Sean Payton, Denver Broncos, great offensive line. We got some gifts from the fantasy gods this year.
Yeah, I'm liking RJ Harvey, obviously, as the resident Broncos fan, but RJ Harvey was also one of my guys through the process. If you followed me, I really liked RJ Harvey's tape. Biggest concern for him and being in a Sean Payton offense is, being able to pass block, right? That
Yeah.
was one of the issues with RJ Harvey in college, where it was an area where he definitely needed to get better at. I think Sean Payton's a guy that prides himself. He wants his wide receivers to block. He wants his running backs to be good at blocking, and so I think there's something there. I think maybe he sees something in him. Maybe he sees a way that they can help him develop in that area. But that's going to be the biggest concern for him. And obviously, 24 years old as a running back is not always something that dynasty managers necessarily love. But he's definitely a riser, in my opinion. I mean, you look at this running back room, and Bo Nix led the team in rushing in a lot of games, carried the ball 92 times. And when you look at the touch distribution, Javonte had 139 carries. He's gone. Jaleel McLaughlin, I think this is more of a Jaleel replacement, who carried the ball 113 times last year, and really was a big tell on the field. And I just don't think, this is like an upgrade from what they were hoping for. I think the cool comp is when you look at RJ Harvey, he's exactly the same size as Aaron Jones, 5'9",
Mhm.
right? Both guys 5'9", 208 pounds. Like these are two guys, like maybe not the same player because Aaron Jones is a really good receiving back. But RJ Harvey for a guy his size is pretty strong and low to the ground and well
Yeah.
built. Even though he's only at 208 pounds.
Yeah, I kind of see shades of Austin Eckler in him. I think he's just like a bowling ball, and he's a former converted quarterback. I mean, guys
Mhm.
like that are typically freak athletes, and he is. That's why his vision is so good. He's going to be great out of the backfield. The pass blocking thing I always go to, and this is perfect because we have Sean Payton. Alvin Kamara's pass blocking success rates were never very good, but he was so dominant on the field. He was able to kind of work around that. If RJ Harvey is producing in the same stratosphere as anybody, even close to Alvin Kamara, you're going to see him on the field early and often.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add to close out is he's actually 5'8", not 5'9", but so
Mhm.
is Aaron Jones, right?
Yeah.
And so 5'8", 208 to 205 pounds, right?
Mhm.
Depending on who weighs him in, it's still a guy that's low to the ground, like you said, has really good contact balance and
Mhm.
really good vision, and honestly can be a really good receiving back, which honestly we've seen Sean Payton's offenses when they have guys that can catch the football, they thrive.
Yeah.
So I like the addition of RJ Harvey.
Mhm.
Next player on this list is going to be Tre Harris.
Mhm.
Tre Harris, 23.5 years old, wide receiver, goes to the Chargers at pick 55, second round pick. So he gets that day two capital. He's definitely a riser as well. And wide receiver 6 off the board. He's player profiler is ranked 8th receiver, 23rd overall. But I think this is a really, really awesome landing spot. I'm really excited for Tre Harris. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that's going, that 112 area now in some rookie drafts because, I mean, he finds himself in a really good situation.
Yeah, this is great. The Chargers and Jim Harbaugh, they just get us. And, as 30-year-old white guys who love fantasy football, it's like they make their picks with us in mind. This one in particular, great landing spot for him. He's a traditional X, incredible deep threat. He's great at the point of catch. And then he gets to go play with Justin Herbert. They bring in Hampton. They bring in McConkey last year. Like everybody fits into this offense so well, and everyone's going to play their role so well. I'm very excited for just, he's basically for me just a little bit smaller Mike Williams, but he doesn't land like he's falling on a grenade. He's a little bit better in that department.
Yeah, Mike Williams is the classic guy that he always seems to get hurt.
Mhm.
But I mean, when you look at the yards per route run, especially
Mhm.
versus man coverage, you now add him and Lad McConkey, who are two
Mhm.
really good players against man coverage. He averaged over 10 yards per route run versus man coverage, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a super impressive for him. And I think it's just another layer to this offense that's really been dying for another wide receiver to step up. And they got
Mhm.
the addition of Lad last year, but I'm not necessarily stocked down on Lad either.
Yeah.
I think this is going to help the entire room and should open things up in this offense. This offense now brings in Omarion Hampton and Tre Harris to go along with, Vlad McConkey. I mean, this is a pretty impressive offense if Tre Harris and Omarion Hampton can be the guys that, they were touted to be, prior to getting drafted in the pre-draft process.
Yeah, and you got to have, you go to a quarterback like Justin Herbert. I mean, he supported multiple wide receiver ones. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, when they could play together, were both dominant players as far as health or when health wasn't an issue. Also, he's not the most polished wide receiver. He's still a little raw, especially for his age, but you're going to an adult system with amazing players. That's kind of going to fast track some of that development. So, love this one. Great riser. And I definitely think you're right. End of that first round, beginning of the second is going to be where he lives.
So the next player on this list is going to be Terrance Ferguson as another riser out of Oregon, tight end, 22 and a half years old, second round pick, pick 46 to the Rams. And really, really love this landing spot. Tight end 4 off the board. Player profiler is number 5 ranked tight end, 33rd overall rookie. I really, really love this landing spot for Terrance Ferguson. Chuck, what are your thoughts and feelings on Terrance Ferguson?
I love this one as well. Sean McVay was very vocal about how much they wanted to get Brock Bowers last year, and he did not fall to them. They went defense this year. They're kind of, they're righting that wrong. They bring in Ferguson. They bring him in the second round, which is great. I mean, the second round is the round for tight ends. I
Mhm.
understand that. I understand why some of them go in the first round, as far as, talent and profile goes. But you look at all the best tight ends in NFL history, and just about all of them are in the second round. So he goes to an offense that is going to be able to maximize. He's not the most athletic guy, but he is a smart player. So you put him in there with Puka, you put him in there with Adams. I think this is an aspect of this team that they want to develop, and they're making a clear indication that that's where they want to go. So I love him. This was a great draft for tight ends, and he's certainly one of them.
Yeah, I mean, with the Rams, I think what excites me the most about this landing spot is that, this is a team in the Rams that have been really, really looking to add to the tight end
Mm,
position for a while, right? We heard talks of them, are they going to go and trade up for Brock Bowers last year, right?
mm,
We heard, talks this year about the tight end class, right? And I think they've been looking for that guy, right? Tyler Higbee comes off the injury last year, right? He produces a little bit, but not really enough for fantasy. And it was towards the end of the year. I think Terrance Ferguson's a really, really strong athlete. He tested out really well, right? 9.32 RAS score, which, comps close to Travis Kelce, who had a
mm,
9.67 RAS score. Now, I don't always put too much stock into the RAS as much anymore, just because a lot of these guys aren't doing full testing now. And so, but when you watch Terrance Ferguson, he tested really well. He was a standout. And I mean, his 40-yard dash was a 4.63 as a tight end. That's really impressive. A 1.61 split. And I'm really excited for this guy. I mean, he checks the boxes for what I'm looking for, especially for a guy in a Sean McVay offense. So
mm.
I think I'm over the moon about Terrance Ferguson. I don't want to leave rookie drafts without him. I'm going to try my hardest to grab him, and I think he's probably going to settle somewhere around maybe that 2.7 to back end of the second round is where I think he might push up to. But we'll see how the rest of the community reacts to it.
Yeah, I certainly would rather wait on him than taking a stab at Tyler Warren or even Mason Taylor. And that's really nothing about them as players. I both think they're going to be well, but this is just, for me, a potential dream landing spot. And people aren't going to view it that way because of the lack of production from the tight end position in the past. But I think it's coming.
Yeah, I'm stoked for it. I think it's a really, really awesome landing spot. Next guy on our list for a riser is going to be Quinshon Judkins, Ohio State running back. He falls to the Browns here, and falls is kind of a maybe not the best way to put it, because
Mm,
they took him pretty high, right? He was the 36th pick off the board,
mm.
right? Third running back off the board, 21 years old, right? Turns 22 at the end of the season. Player profiler rookie ranking of RB4, and the fifth overall player on the entire rookie rankings. I really like Quinshon Judkins, and I like this landing spot.
Yeah, this is great. I was kind of sad last year and I couldn't figure out why it was. And it's because one of my favorite things in the world was a healthy Nick Chubb, and I didn't have that. It was pretty brutal. Like, it's the only thing we can rely on in Cleveland is strong running back play. And he's basically Nick Chubb. I mean, this is great. He's got elite patience, elite vision. He's a tough between the tackles runner. He can still break away, which kind of makes him different than some of these guys that we typically describe as, those moving the sticks type players. I'm not really too worried about anything else going on in Cleveland as long as they have an RB1 like this. Jerome Ford, kind of like Tyler Warren, a nice complementary player, but they gave him the spotlight and he was kind of inconsistent with it. So this pick is a clear indication he's just absolutely perfect landing spot.
Yeah, and when we talk risers, right? I mean, Quinshon Judkins was kind of, around that 108 range is what
Mm,
people had him. I think he's going to probably rise to that 106. Is likely where I see him settling consensus wise, somewhere between the 106 to the 108.
mm,
But I mean, when you look at Quinshon Judkins, it's one of the best landing spots you could have asked for, right? He lands in the Kevin Stefanski offense, right? He returns back to Ohio, right? So he's in a familiar area. He doesn't have to go far.
mm.
I mean, I know that doesn't sound like much to people, but like, he doesn't have to change his environment. Like, that's a big deal, right? Like, he's
Yep.
getting to play for the same place that he just played for a few years in college. And so, when I look at Judkins, I wasn't as high on him, pre-combine, but what he did at the combine, I mean, he was one of 5 running backs since 2003 to post a broad jump of 11 plus feet
Mm.
with a vertical of 38 plus inches and a 40 time under 4.5. I don't put too much stock into 40 times for running backs because we rarely see them run straight in a straight line, but still super impressive for a guy that I had concerns about the
Mhm.
explosiveness. And I think this is an awesome landing spot for Cleveland.
It is. You definitely have to worry about the temptation of living in Cleveland. There's just, so much going on there. You have to worry if he'll be able to focus. But the only hesitation I have, and it has nothing to do with him as a player, is this Browns offensive line has taken a massive step back over the last
Mm.
few years from where it was. And so for somebody who does operate in between the tackles, it might be tough coming out of the gate. But as far as dynasty goes, as far as the path for this guy, I mean, we're talking about lock it down. Love it.
So let me ask you before we move on to our next player, and we're not
Mm,
going to talk about Trevion Henderson today, so maybe that's a little bit
mm,
of a spoiler. But
mm,
I would ask you, right? Trevion Henderson finds himself in a running back room with Ramondre Stevenson,
mhm.
and he's with a more revamped offense, right? And
Yep.
then you look at Quinshon Judkins, who was his running back, a running mate in Ohio State. Do you still prefer, or do you prefer Quinshon Judkins over Trevion Henderson, or is there a guy that you lean towards right now at this point in the process?
I typically lean right now towards Judkins just because there's something about the New England team. I see that the vision for them being Drake May focused as it should be. I just think he's an incredible player, and I think that they have plans for that offense to be something special. Cleveland, I don't know if they'll ever get their shit together, but I do know that they can run the hell out of the ball when things are rolling. So I think that's going to be a little bit more of. I think he'll get the touches and the volume. And I might be a minority on that one, but they've still got Ramondre in New England now. The previous coaching staff, they poo-poo Ramondre, and they probably should have because he fumbled 4 games in a row at one point, I think. But I
Yeah.
do think he's a talented player that can still spell a little bit better than maybe a Jerome Ford type could.
Yeah, I'm still going back and forth on this. I don't want sometimes we overreact to the draft, right? And
Mm,
and sometimes we have to keep in mind like sometimes talent outweighs, the landing
yeah.
spot, right? Especially if it's a really good talent. I think I still lean Trevion Henderson just because to me, look, they took this guy really
Mm,
high, even though they extended Ramondre Stevenson, which
mhm,
wasn't when Vrabel and the staff was here, right? And so, this Elliott Wolf and them did extend Ramondre, and Elliott Wolf is still
mm.
there.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
but I,
good.
I but I do prefer Trevion because I just think the offense is going to be better. I think
Yeah.
Drake May is going to take a step forward. They brought in Will Campbell. They brought in Morgan Moses at right tackle. They brought in Bradbury at center. Like
Mm.
this is a revamped O line, and I'm really excited. For what we're going to see there, and so I just prefer Trevion. I think at this point still, but full disclosure, I was more in on Trevion than I was Judkins pre-draft anyway.
Yeah, and you make a good point about the resources the Patriots have invested. I mean, they've gone from probably one of the worst lines in the league the last 2 years to they bring in Will Campbell, they bring in Morgan Moses. They're making a concerted effort to
Yeah.
make this an adult team, which it's been sorely missing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Mm,
So let's switch it up here to go to our fallers. Tyler Warren is going to be the first guy on this list, 22.9 years old, first round pick, right? Picked 16 to the Colts. Sorry, 15 to the Colts. Tight end 2 off the board, and player profiler rookie rank, it had him as tight end 1 and the 11th ranked player off the board. I'm not in love with this spot, right? I'm not in
mm.
love with this landing spot. He's definitely a faller for me. He was a guy that was going somewhere around that 107 range was where he was, mocked to pre-draft. And I don't see that as a place that he stays consensus wise once rookie drafts really start to kick off. What are your thoughts on Tyler Warren and his current situation?
This is a frustrating landing spot, especially because it's just about everybody had the Colts taking a tight end. It turned out to be Loveland was what everybody mocked. They didn't think Warren would fall this far. But under Richardson, this is a team in back-to-back years that has finished in the near bottom in pass attempts per game, so the volume's going to struggle. But the problem is that when Joe Flacco's in there, he's throwing it 40 times a game. That's his average, which is very, very nice. So what do they want to be? Do they want to be this slice and dice passing offense, and they hope Richardson can do that if he's healthy? I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think he's just going to be one of those frustrating players, like almost kind of like those early TJ Hawkinson years where he really, we knew how talented he was, but he just wasn't important to the offense and what they wanted to do. He didn't really flourish consistently until he goes to somewhere like Minnesota. So I don't think we'll have to wait that long because he's a crazy talented player. He basically is just mini Gronk, not even mini Gronk. He's just Gronk. So maybe he'll prove us all wrong. Maybe they have big plans for him. He's certainly going to be their most talented offensive pass catcher. So that part is at least encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of gone back and forth with him as well. When you look at the tight end total target share last year in this offense, we had 61 plus 14. We had 75 total targets to the tight end position, right?
Mm,
I would say I'm expecting Warren to at least have a floor of somewhere around 50 targets, right? Like, I
yeah.
think that's fair. They invest a first round pick into him. Now, the biggest kicker is Anthony Richardson, right? I'm more excited if Daniel Jones is the quarterback
Hmm.
from a fantasy standpoint, because I think he can get the ball. I mean, we saw what you alluded to Joe Flacco last year about, him in the offense last year. A lot of the guys that we wanted to see produced in the games where there was a more efficient quarterback
Mm,
there. And for what it's worth, I mean, Daniel Jones, I'm not excited about Daniel Jones, but I mean, we saw what he was able to do with guys like with the Giants. We saw Malik Neighbors get peppered with targets, right? And we saw Wan'Dale Robinson, who ran a lot of underneath, which is what we'll probably expect from Tyler Warren. He's not going to be running these 10, 15, 20 yard routes downfield. Like, he's going to work underneath a lot. And so I would prefer Daniel Jones in this offense. And then, look, I think if you're taking Tyler Warren, you have to be comfortable with the unknown, right? I mean, there's a
yeah.
good chance that this coaching staff, if Anthony Richardson's not there after this year, this coaching staff probably isn't either. And so,
Mm,
I'm not saying the new coaching staff's not going to like Tyler Warren, but, there's still a lot of unknowns. Who's the coaching staff? Who's the quarterback, right? After
mm.
this year. And you're not expecting much from him year one, right? If you're a contender that has a good player at the tight end position and you really like the talent with Tyler Warren, then absolutely, I'm fine taking him there. Just understanding, hey, he's probably not going to do much for you year one.
Yeah, and it can be frustrating knowing that you're probably not going to get ROI on a top pick, fantasy wise, for a few years here. But if you believe that it's coming, like you said, there's the writing is on the wall with this current Colts regime. And these elite tight ends. Brock Bowers goes to the Raiders. Probably felt like a death sentence for fantasy for a lot of people. He's already the tight end one, so
Yeah.
there's a path here, but he's definitely a faller for me.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, right? I mean, Bowers feels like an anomaly, right? I mean, this could just be a
Mm,
situation where, look, we get a really good talent here with Tyler Warren, but maybe it takes a year to develop. And look, we've been spoiled the last 2 years where we've got 2, 3 years where we've gotten
mm,
some really good tight ends to come out, and they haven't really taken much time to develop. So,
yeah.
you know, do we get more of a return to the mean where we're kind of used to these guys not just exploding year one, but still
Mm,
good, talented players?
yeah.
Next player on the list is going to be Jaylen Noel. Right. Jaylen Noel gets picked to the Texans, right? Goes third round, 79th pick off the board, wide receiver 11 off the board. And he joins his running mate and Jaden Higgins in college. Both of them get drafted to the Texans here. Player profiler ranking wide receiver 6, 17th player off of their rookie board, 22 years old. What are your thoughts on the landing spot here, Chuck?
It's very weird that they took both of these guys. I can't get over that. I'm sorry. That's going to bother me for a long time. And so it might make some of my takes irrational, but I'm an emotional guy. I like the fit. This is an offense that all it was missing was talent last year. Diggs, Collins, and a little bit of Tank Dell coming back. They were, I don't want to say thriving, but he was certainly able. Two of the three guys were eating most of the time. So you upgrade both of those positions. People forget that Stephon Diggs he was a top 15 player last year before he went down or top 15 wide receiver. So
Yep.
I definitely love Higgins more. I hate this for Noel. I hate that he has to go be a wide receiver 3. That's really what this boils down to. I'm not really, they're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, so I'm not really sure how much 11 personnel they are going to run. The offensive line is still brutal. So, they did run a lot of 22 personnel last year. Is that going to be the playbook going forward until they figure this thing out? I don't know. I can't say for sure. I like him as a player. I like what he brings. He brings an element to this offense that, they're that kind of what they wanted Tank Dell to do, only he's 30 pounds heavier. So faller for me. We'll see what happens during camp, just because they took Higgins Higgins basically was a first round pick where they took him. But you know what? Sometimes camp battles prove to be something we weren't ready for.
Yeah, this is tough for me. Jaden Higgins at least was my guy. I'm more
Mhm,
okay with him than I am with Noel here.
mhm,
The the thing is, Jaden Higgins slots into, he's very comparable to Nico Collins, right? So
Mhm.
they're very similar, where Christian Kirk is on an expiring deal, right? And he might not be there for much longer outside
Yeah.
of this year, right? So, does Noel kind of slot in as a replacement there, or does that just mean Jaden Higgins and Nico Collins after this year are really running in a lot of two wide receiver sets, right?
Yeah.
When you look at this offense, their pace of play was bottom third in the NFL last year, and so that's a concern. There's a lot of mouths to feed at the wide receiver position, right? You have Nico Collins, you have Christian Kirk, and now you bring in these two guys, and John Mechie, who, maybe he gets traded. I'm not expecting John
Mhm.
Mechie to blow up necessarily, but it's a crowded room. And then you
Yeah.
factor in Dalton Schultz too, who had 85 targets last year. Not a single one of these wide receivers had 100 targets
Mhm.
last season. Now, mind you, Nico Collins was a target away from 100,
Mhm.
and he also missed a good portion of games. And Tank Dell had 81, who also missed 4 games as well.
Mhm.
But I just worry about, is there enough to go around? And this is one of those things where you kind of just have to swallow maybe a little bit of your pride on a guy that you really liked pre-draft and just come to
Mhm.
grips with the fact that maybe this is just, maybe if you get a discount on your rookie drafts and the guy falls enough and you're comfortable, you take him. But outside of that, I'm not reaching for a guy like Noel, who likely is going to fall in a lot of rookie drafts than where he was going pre-draft.
Yeah, it's very strange for a wide receiver to feel like a handcuff, but that's basically what this is. They're Tampa Bay did something similar. I know we'll get to them, where maybe they just looked at this offense and they looked at what happened last year and they said, we never want to have bad wide receivers on the field. John Mechie, he's not a bad player, but he's certainly one of those guys that we were all kind of like, if this guy got a little bit more playing time
Yeah.
on a different offense, maybe there's something there. Could Noel be that next guy? It seems more likely than not. And they're going to need somebody who can work underneath, who can work in the slot and kind of be that, yards after the catch guy. And there's a role for him there, but as far as how often that's going to translate to on the field, snap share, we don't know.
Hey, the last thing I'll say is the benefit is you don't root for injuries, but Christian
Mm.
Kirk, who is going to likely be there in that Stephon Diggs role, which was a lot of
Mhm.
underneath stuff, Christian Kirk hasn't been able to stay very healthy, and Nico
Mhm.
Collins missed some time last year, right? So, maybe there's a path, but it might be due to injury. And I never want to bank on, hey, I'm high on this guy because he's in a room with guys that maybe don't always stay healthy. Now, shifting gears to a room with two wide receivers that had issues staying healthy, we move on to Emeka Egbuka, who's one of your guys, right?
Mm.
He joins your team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? He gets 22 years old, first round pick 19, second wide receiver off the board. They invested heavily into this guy. He was Pro Football Focus's wide receiver 4 and the 10th rated rookie overall. What are your thoughts on this landing spot?
The Buccaneers are hilarious. They're like the inverse Chargers, where I just feel like I would love to know how many coolers are in the draft room when they're making these picks. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I got the Bucks hat right behind me. Who doesn't want multiple Chris Godwins? And that's what this is. The best comp for Emeka Egbuka was Chris Godwin. Baker was able to. The reason this pick is so surprising to me personally is because Baker was able to still keep that offense humming last year with both of these guys, with Evans and Godwin out of the lineup. They ended up finishing 5th overall in passing offense. If you're looking at this from when is Ibuka going to be on the field, because he's not as talented as the two guys ahead of him. So it's not like Jackson Smith and Jigba, where it's like, okay, there's maybe even a possibility that he's better than Metcalf early on. Who knows? He's not better than Godwin or Mike Evans, but they ran the 5th most 11 personnel last year. So is he going to be on the field often? I think so. I think this is a clear indication. They give their rookies a ton of leeway. So, and that's on both sides of the ball. So they're, what do we do here, guys? What do we do with this pick?
I mean, I was definitely bummed out, more so because look, a common theme with
Mm.
our fallers here is just no clear, runway for,
Landing spot. Yeah.
production. Well, just for production year one,
Mhm.
right? But when we look at this room, right? Mike Evans turns 32 in August. Chris Godwin is 29. He had tore his ACL in 2021, dislocated ankle in 2024, right? And how long does it take Chris Godwin to get back? Is he going to be ready week one? I think he
Mhm.
will be, but does he have some slow ramp back up, right? You hear about this like tightrope injury, and I don't think that's what he had. I'm not a doctor,
Mhm.
but you've seen a lot of guys that have these rough injuries ankle wise, and it takes them sometimes a year to come back, right, and be productive.
Mhm.
And so I'm fine with the pick. Again, if you're comfortable waiting, right? If you have a
Mhm.
situation where, you can take a luxury pick, right?
Mm,
Emeka Egbuka, I'm excited for him. Honestly, I'm excited
mm,
for the landing spot. I think it's good. The problem is Chris Godwin was so good out of the slot, right?
yep.
So good. We talked about it before last year, in 2023, like he wasn't the same guy because he wasn't playing majority in the slot. They moved him to primarily in the slot last year and he blew up, right?
Mm,
So that's a lot of where Egbuka likely plays, though Egbuka did play on the outside and inside a good amount. So he can play both ways. But it's just a matter of, Chris Godwin and they
mm.
just gave him a big deal. And then you look at Jalen McMillan, who is probably the biggest loser in this room, who people thought was wide receiver 2 a month
Yeah.
ago, and people were drafting pretty high. He's likely Jalen McMillan, truthfully, Chuck.
Mm,
Jalen McMillan he's behind all three of these receivers, so he's the fourth wide receiver. Then you bring in Cade Otton, who took a nice step forward last year,
mm,
and then you have Bucky Irving and Rashad White, who both caught 50 passes last year.
mm.
Jalen McMillan might be the fifth, sixth, seventh option in this offense, which good for the Bucks. I think it's
Yeah.
stocked up for Baker, but if you bought into Jalen
Mhm.
McMillan, I feel pretty bad.
Yeah, it's a tough go, and you got to kind of look at, what is this team going to do differently with Liam Cohen moving on? They promote Josh Grizzard from within, so you know that there's going to be some consistency.
Mm.
He came over from Miami before he was on this staff, where no team had target consolidation more to their top two guys than the Miami Dolphins have over the last 4 years between Tyreek and Waddle. So I still think it's going to be the Godwin and Mike Evans show. I really love that you mentioned them moving him back to the slot because that's all anybody ever wanted and they did it. What are you going to start? You're going to put him back outside. You're going to start moving him around. I don't know, but it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it will be. Let's move on to our last player here. It's
Mhm.
going to be Luther Burden. Um, man, another guy who like 2024 season, this was a guy that many had as the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, and then has a down year, right? 21 years old, second round pick 39 to the Bears, wide receiver 5 off the board, gets really high draft capital. Player profile is wide receiver 5 and 10th overall player on the board. What are your thoughts on this landing spot for Burden?
All I wanted for him was to go to an innovative, creative, pushing the envelope offensive mind, and he does. And it's just about the worst landing spot he could have had for fantasy. But I mean, I don't know. They just signed DJ Moore to a big deal. They draft Rome last year. What is Burden's role in this offense? Is he the Jamison Williams type? Now, that's not a apples to apples comparison, but just as far as taking the 10,000 foot view, the bird's eye view of what are they going to use this guy for? I mean, they do need explosiveness. Moore and Rome aren't exactly playmaking wide receivers. They're more of your just like traditional move the chains guys. So, what he did in Missouri, the way that Mickey Mouse offense operated, I wasn't too terribly concerned about his dip last year compared to his previous year's tape is some of the most fun tape you'll find on any prospect out there. So they go luxury pick. They bring in Loveland. They bring in Burden. They clearly don't. They want to take the pressure off of Caleb Williams. They want to make this, a what do they call it? A tightrope, high wire act, something like that. I just hate it for him, though. I personally do.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for Burden. I
Mm.
will tell you, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole in the first round for rookie drafts. I've
Mm,
seen many say that he's, somewhere around
mm,
that 112, 111 spot, like
yeah.
post rookie draft.
Mm,
I'm not touching it. I get he's got the
yeah.
capital, but for me, look, this is an offense that loses Keenan Allen, who had 121 targets last year. DJ Moore had 140, and consistently, DJ Moore has his floor is like 125 targets
Yep.
a year, right? So even if he comes down from 140, I don't see him going under 120. And then you look at Roma Dunze, who had 101, who likely maybe gets an increased role and should probably maybe get to
Mm,
120, right? That's what we would think. Then you
yeah.
look at the rest of this offense when you talk about consolidation, but they had 3 wide receivers with 100 targets, and they brought in Colston Loveland, who would be next to Cole Kmet, who's going to also, receive targets, right? And then I just I'm not super worried about DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. I know there are people that are kind of going out of their way to kind of trash both guys because they,
Mm,
you know, they they like the pick and they're more concerned about both of those guys. But I actually think they're going to be fine. I just worry this is an offense that had a really bad defense last year, right? And that led them into being in high scoring games, right? Because of that, like they had to throw the football a ton. If the
Yeah.
running game stabilizes a little bit and they get more balanced and they get their defense improves a little bit, right? Like, are they going to be asking Caleb Williams to throw the ball as much as they did, where he threw the ball 562 times? Like,
Mhm.
I just don't know if I see that happening. I really just don't like the spot for Luther Burden. Maybe they get creative with him, and I'm sure he's going to have a fine NFL career, but I'm not touching him in the first round of rookie drafts if that's where he's going and that's where he settles.
Yeah, you're gonna want to just wait a little bit and then buy low on him. This is a great buy low candidate.
Hmm.
They have their top two guys for a couple more years, so he's redshirting basically. He's taking some time off. It's the thing that really is going to screw everybody here is that they didn't address what I still think is there and was their biggest problem is the offensive line.
Hmm.
Colston Loveland is not known for his blocking ability. He can block when asked to, but when the rest of your unit is subpar at it, it's going to make everybody look worse. So if Caleb Williams' biggest player, his biggest flaw is getting rid of the ball and not taking these sacks, they still haven't addressed that. So the targets are still going to be there for the top guys. I just don't know. The only thing that's changed about this team really is that they brought in Ben Johnson. I don't know much more what else is going to happen.
Well, to be fair, I mean they did bring in Joe Tooney, they did bring in Drew Dahlman at center, and they
But
did
I just don't think
bring
that's going to
in.
fix the line like they want it to. The Chiefs' biggest priority was making their line better, and they're trading away an all-pro player.
I know.
They're trying. I'll give them that.
Well, but I. So is your argument that you think Joe Tooney maybe the Chiefs just saw him at the end of wanted to get rid of him because the name was worth kind of more than what his value was? You think at that point?
Yeah, I think bringing in a backup tackle from the 49ers instead of bringing back Joe Tooney for another year is a real indication of just I mean, they scout their own players pretty well. Now they do have some misses for sure, and that's what led them to this situation. But but you know what? Does a declining Chiefs offensive lineman mean a lot more on the Bears offensive line? That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when your unit's that bad, right? Like your
Yeah,
bad players are average players for some teams. I think
yeah.
the thing with Joe Tooney, I think maybe was more so that he probably didn't want to go to play tackle, and they might have wanted him to, and he might have wanted to return to his original true position.
Yeah.
Now we do this a lot with the Bears, though. We feel like Bears won the offseason, Bears won the offseason, Bears won the offseason, right? And yeah, I mean, I definitely think they did a lot to address that offensive line. But again, to your point, we still have to see how those pieces fit in. But I think they
Mhm.
they tried at least, which is encouraging.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, I mean, Luther Burden to close out. I'm not like I said, I'm not touching him in the first round.
Mhm.
Um, Again, if you're willing to take luxury picks and you want to, maybe draft him as a guy that's not gonna play for you or make a huge impact year one, go for it, right? If people are of the opinion that maybe they move DJ Moore, right? Is that a possibility they trade him before this season or even after next year, right? Maybe. I mean, he had some
Mhm.
attitude issues last year if you're buying into that, but I'd much rather do what Chuck is saying, where I would rather just buy him low after maybe a subpar rookie season and take a swing that way, right? But
Mm.
anything else that you want to add before we close out?
You know what? Let's close out with some quick would you rathers. Would you rather take Luther Burden or Pat Bryant?
Luther Burden. Now,
Okay.
at cost, probably Pat Bryant because I think he's
Mm.
probably still a third round pick.
Yeah,
He may have moved to the third round.
Luther Burden or Kyle Williams.
Kyle Williams.
Yeah, so that's just kind of the okay, Luther Burden or RJ Harvey.
I'll take RJ Harvey. Both got second round capital, but at least he's got a clear path.
Yeah. All right, my last one here. Luther Burden or Jaylen Noel.
Hmm.
Tricky, right? It's tricky, tricky, tricky. A lot of these guys are in similar spots, even though their teams are wildly different.
Yeah, I would go Luther Burden at that point.
Yeah, I think you're
I
taking
would.
the talent, a guy in a similar spot, but much more talented. So that's what it boils down to for me, also.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, man. Well, this was good. Next week's show is going to finally we can start seeing where the market, right? We'll get a week's worth of data where, we have some startups happen, we have some rookie drafts happen, and we can start to kind of accumulate the data and start to do what is the fallout for some of these veterans, right? And some of these rookies, have they moved up and how far have they moved up on the actual rookie draft data? But that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.